Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Week 7 Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate Show. I am your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Ari Meyer to preview each and every game heading into Week 7 of the NFL season. Ari, it's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. This should be a pretty good week. I know there's a game going on right now in London. Just picked up from halftime the Jaguars and the Patriots, but other than that, a lot of games left on the schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, we will be taking callers throughout the stream, so feel free to call in using the link in the chat. And of course, this is the first live stream on this channel, so bear with us if there's any technical difficulties, but we hope to have a great show. With that being said, we have a great week ahead of us, so let's get right into it. Of course, the Patriots Jaguars game is going on right now. Jacksonville's up 25-10 overall. Really good game for them so far, but we're going to skip over that game for now, of course, because there's not much to break down. The first game is a great one. Lions versus Vikings. This game's taking place in Minnesota. Vikings are 1.5 point favorites. Lions are 4-1. Vikings, of course, 5-0. And obviously, the Vikings and the Chiefs are the only two undefeated teams left in the NFL. Minnesota's coming off their bye week, while the Lions just had a dominating 47-9 Week 6 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. However, in that game, Aiden Hutchinson did suffer a season-ending injury. Do you have the Vikings staying undefeated, or will they finally be taken down by the Detroit Lions?
I still think the Vikings end up winning this game. Justin Jefferson is supposed to be playing. So I know they have Terry and Arnold on the Lions, but I think that Jefferson ends up being the difference maker, especially when you don't have as much pressure as you were expecting on Darnold due to Hutchinson being out. So I would probably still have the Vikings in this one. It's going to be probably one of the better games this year in terms of regular season games, but I would still take the Vikings, especially at home with the run that they've been on. ESPN analytics has the Lions with a 56% chance of winning, but I just think that at the end of the day, especially if Aaron Jones plays like he's healthy and not like he's questionable, which he has been leading up to this game, he'll play from what I've read, but if he plays like he's healthy, I think that the Vikings win. I do think it'll be pretty close, but yeah, at the end of the day, I still have the Vikings.
Yeah, now, call me crazy, but I would be really surprised if the Lions did not end up winning this game. They're currently fourth in both rushing yards and passing yards per game. Their defense has also allowed 83.2 rushing yards per game, which ranks third best in the NFL. Despite Hutchinson being out, this team is one of the best rosters in all of football. Give me the Detroit Lions in this matchup. I don't think that the Vikings are going to be undefeated anymore after this week.
Yeah, that's fair, but we've seen, for example, Aaron Jones against a good Texans defense got 102 yards on the ground, and one of them was a 39-yard rush. So I get what you're saying, but I think it'll be close regardless.
Yeah, I definitely think this is going to be one of the best games of the week. But moving forward, we have a game that might not be as close. The Titans versus the Bills. Of course, in Buffalo, Bills are 9 point favorites. Titans 1-4 on the year. Bills 4-2. Some notable injuries, mainly for the Titans. Tajay Spears is out with a knee injury. Treylon Burks is out with a hamstring injury. Now, of course, this will be Amari Cooper's first game as a Buffalo Bill, but you look at Tennessee's defense, they've allowed just 137 passing yards per game, which is the best in the NFL right now. What do you expect this matchup is going to look like between Cooper and this Titans secondary?
You said they're 9-point favorites?
Yes, 9 point favorites in Buffalo.
I would say Buffalo easily doubles that. I'd say
Saying
they
that, I
win by
completely agree with that.
probably 3 touchdowns, if not more. Although, um, I don't know how much of the Steelers you watched last year. Kenny Pickett just wasn't great, but Mason Rudolph came in for a game and had their best offensive game of the season. And Levis is not playing this week. So Mason Rudolph could turn the Titans season around. I don't think it'll happen. It's a possibility. If Mason Rudolph doesn't play like, I don't know, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL during this game, then the Bills win by like 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with spreads in the NFL is that they can't make it too unrealistic. Like college football, you could have a team, favored by 20. That's not necessarily uncommon. In the NFL, you have to keep it at least somewhat close. But maybe Will Levis being out is actually a good thing because he's thrown in just 5 games. He's thrown 7 interceptions, which is the most in the entire NFL. We know that the Bills secondary would be taking full advantage of that. So we'll see how Mason Rudolph does. Maybe that ends up being better. I graded this Amari Cooper trade an A+ for the Bills. I think they're getting a lot of value with him, adding another asset, not really giving up too much. So I have the Bills in this one as well, easily covering the spread. Could definitely see a 20-point victory here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
ESPN also has like the total like over under is 41.5. I would probably take the over in that game just because I think that the Bills defense is pretty good, but they always make some mistakes throughout the game. So I think it'll be a high scoring game with most of the points coming from the Bills. I expect the Titans to still get a touchdown or two.
Yeah, I agree with the high scoring game. Expect maybe a Bills defensive touchdown. I
Yeah.
think that might be in the cards for this game.
If I may seem a little biased for a second, someone who's probably had one of the better turnaround seasons in terms of performance has been Damar Hamlin. He went from being a decent option 2 years ago when the thing happened. Last year, mostly played on special teams, but this year has been, at least he hasn't been a liability the entire season. He got his first interception of his career, and he had some decent defensive plays last week. But I would look for him to have a big game just because the Titans are an easier opponent to defend than most.
Yeah, I mean, last year, of course, it was awesome seeing him back on the field when he came back.
Yeah.
But then again, I think he just got like, 2 tackles or something, not that much. We've really seen him take a step in actual productivity this year. So definitely looking forward to seeing how
Mm-hmm.
he does. Now, moving on, we have the Dolphins and the Colts. The Colts are 3-point favorites in this one. Colts are 3-3. Dolphins are 2-3. This game's taking place in Indianapolis. Jonathan Taylor is also out for this matchup. Now, I have a hot take for this game, and it kind of revolves around whether Anthony Richardson should actually be starting. And I just
Oh, the
simply,
answer is no.
yeah, I don't know if that's a hot take. Maybe to some people it is, but I really don't think it is. I understand you have you took him early in the draft, and you want to blossom him. You've seen his comparisons, you know what he can do, and you want to get him on the field. But there is
Yeah.
no reason they should be forcing him on the field right now. I'll let you talk. Let me give you some stats real quick though. Joe Flacco, when he played in 3 games, he threw for 716 yards and 7 touchdowns to go with just 1 interception. He had a 65.7 completion percentage. And then you look at Richardson, hasn't been nearly as good throughout 4 games. He's had a 50.6 completion percentage, throwing for just 654 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. I mean, there's no reason that they should be putting Richardson in the lineup just because they want to get him some snaps and they want to get him involved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I
yeah,
agree. I think that Flacco has played surprisingly well, and I say surprising because everyone has written him off every year that he's signed with another team. If you watched how he played late last year, it's not all that surprising. But I would start Flacco. He's definitely been the better option this year, especially when you have a guy like Richardson who has the potential to be much better than Flacco is currently playing, but at this point hasn't played like it and is also coming off an injury. It's not worth the risk, especially. I mean, you're 3-3, but you're playing a Dolphins team that is very, very beatable.
Yeah,
I would not risk injuring Richardson again. I would put Flacco in that game, but I don't know. I think I might take the Dolphins in this game because I'm worried about
yeah,
health
and I
issues
mean,
for Richardson if he's fully healthy coming back and playing like that.
yeah, I mean, this is Tyler Huntley's second start, so hopefully he can get the hang of things in this one. But I just don't see. And you mentioned the Colts are 3-3. This is a very winnable game. A 3-3 team is looking to hopefully make the playoffs. And if you're going to make the playoffs, Joe Flacco would be the right player to use in this game. Now, the Dolphins have been very, very bad, obviously, without Tua. Tua suffered that injury earlier in the year. In the 3 games without him, the Dolphins have averaged just 10 points per game, and Tyreek Hill has averaged just 44 receiving yards per game. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll see if they can get that offense moving a little bit. But I think it's going to be a close one. I definitely wouldn't rule out the Dolphins in this one just because of the fact that Richardson is starting. But I'm still going to have to go with the Colts because, all in all, Richardson is a playmaker and he can do well if he has the right game. Some games he does really bad, other games, 70-yard touchdowns here and there. So we'll see what happens. But moving on to the next game, the Seahawks versus the Falcons in Atlanta. The Falcons are 3-point favorites. Seahawks are 3-3. Falcons are 4-2 on a little bit of a roll. Now I know that some people watching may have Kenneth Walker in fantasy. We're unsure what his situation is looking like right now, whether he's playing or not. So I'll try and look at that later throughout the episode and see if there's any updates. There should be something coming out soon. Now, we saw the Seahawks have a very hot start to the season, going 3-0. However, those wins came against the Broncos, Patriots, and Dolphins, with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle playing at quarterback. Since then, Seattle has gone 0-3 with losses to the Lions, Giants, and
Mm-hmm.
49ers, especially the Lions and 49ers there. It kind of shows you that when this team finally plays some good competition, they have proven to definitely struggle. Was that hot start for Seattle just an example of a fraudulent team playing easy competition?
I don't think so. I think that they definitely have the talent. At least on the offensive side of the ball, they're definitely pretty solid. I mean, their wide receivers have been good for a couple years at this point. Their running game is also pretty solid. Um, I did just read via Adam Schefter
Yeah, I'm
12,
seeing that now.
12 minutes ago.
Mhm.
Notable actives: Kenneth Walker,
Oh, yeah, I
Aaron
just looked that
Jones,
up now.
Will Levis, and Jameis Winston inactive, which makes Dorian Thompson Robinson the backup for the Browns. But we'll get to that. Um, I think that one of the players he didn't mention in that, who was named active earlier today, is Jesse Bates, one of the safeties for the Falcons. If he plays fully healthy, I think the Falcons can take care of business in this game and win it. They've been kind of on a tear recently. I live with 3 other guys in my place, and all 4 of our teams are 4-2 this year. So this is a massive week for bragging rights for all of us. We have a Falcons fan, a Steelers fan, a Packers fan, and then I'm a Commanders fan, but I also write about the Steelers. So I it's going to be a big week. I think the Falcons come away with the win here just because momentum reasons. Bijan Robinson played great the last couple weeks. I think that they're going to win because their defense will be able to stop the Seahawks pass game because their safeties are very good.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned how good Bijan has been. Drake London as well has really gotten in
Mm-hmm.
that group recently. Falcons on a 3-game winning streak, lost to the Chiefs, kept it close, and then they also beat the Eagles earlier in the year. They're on a roll. I have the Falcons. I
Neither
think
of
this
their
game,
losses were bad losses.
yeah.
They've they had their first convincing win of the season against the Panthers. Every other win came down to like the last 30 seconds of the game. But luckily for them, a win's a win. You move on, you get the next week, and they got to play the Panthers, which for them was probably the easiest game they'll have all season.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have Atlanta in this one again at home. They
Mm-hmm.
should probably take this. Moving over to the next game though, and one of the better games of the week. I actually have this one as the best game of the week. Definitely going to be extremely high scoring, very
Can I guess?
competitive.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Texans Packers.
Yes. Texans
Okay.
Packers. Mhm.
Okay.
And
So
mhm. So yeah, the Texans are or the Packers are 2.5 point favorites in this one. Packers 4-2, Texans 5-1. I'll let you start here.
okay. So if the Packers' pass defense plays well, I could see them winning this game by multiple touchdowns. And I know that's crazy, but their receiving core might be the best in the NFL. And I can't let my roommate hear me say that because he will never let me hear the end of it. But they have serious, like, maybe multiple wide receiver one options in Jalen Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. All of those guys, if you look at like ESPN fantasy or whatever, are projected like 13 plus points a week, which like isn't necessarily wide receiver one, but like they have to split their touches with all the other receivers. And then you get Josh Jacobs in the backfield, who was 460 yards on the season. Pretty good. And you have CJ Stroud, who has already thrown 4 interceptions to 10 touchdowns this year. I could see the Packers winning this one if their defense is able to play well. The only issue they have is they have not signed a consistent kicker all year. They cut their kicker Braden Narvison out of NC State, and they signed Brandon McManus over during the week. But as long as it doesn't come down to kicking, it's a home game at Lambeau for them. I could see them coming out with a win there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to have to disagree. I have the Texans in this one. Now, one thing I will state is how good Jordan Love has been since he's come back. Of course, he suffered that injury in Brazil week 1 of the season. Since then, he's put up some really impressive numbers. In 3 games, he's amassed a total of 871 passing yards and 10 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So he's definitely been a little careless throwing the ball, but still, he's been really good. This game does take place at Lambeau Field, so that will also be good for Green Bay. Despite that, this Texans team has been looking really good. The offense has been great. Nico Collins is out, but I think because of that, especially, it's going to be close. I think it might come down to the last drive, but give me the Texans just barely advancing their record up to 6-1. But again, should be a really, really exciting one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving over to the Bengals versus Browns. This game takes place in Cleveland. This game's not that close to me. Bengals are 5.5 point favorites. They're 2-4 on the year. They're a good 2-4 if you ask me. The Browns are 1-5. Now, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski did confirm that Nick Chubb will be playing today, and as I mentioned, Jerome Ford is also out with a hamstring injury. So, what do you expect to see from Nick Chubb this game coming back from that, of course, terrible injury that he suffered last week or last year? That's what I meant.
Um, if the Browns want any chance of winning, and I know this is going to sound like an exaggeration, Nick Chubb needs to run for like 300 yards.
Yeah.
If you look at any sort of regular or advanced stats or analytics, Deshaun Watson is probably the worst quarterback in football this year.
Yeah.
And other issues with him aside, he's just not a good quarterback, at least this year. So I would take the Bengals every single time in this game. One of my favorite players this year. Not really sure why. Is Andre Yoshivas, the tight end for
Yeah.
the Bengals. I think he'll have a good game. And as sort of a biased fan of the Commanders, I would hope that the Browns become sellers after this game and are willing to part with someone like Denzel Ward, who would be a great corner for a ton of teams that could be competitive this year, but the Browns are just not one of those teams. And I think that the Bengals just have gotten a little bit unlucky so far this season, and they'll probably come out with the win pretty convincingly, even though it's an away game.
Now you mentioned the Bengals have been a little unlucky this season. I agree with that. I mean, they've played well, and Joe Burrow has been one of, if not the best quarterback in the NFL this entire season. Now, another thing, Deshaun Watson's QBR, I was looking at it the other day, it's at like a 21.7, which is just unbelievable. That sounds like a typo just saying it. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
expecting a really big game for Jamar Chase. Definitely a 2 touchdown game for him. Uh,
I mean,
Joe Burrow is 1-5, I think, against the Browns. That's going to change today. Now he's going to be 2-5, and the Bengals are just going to take care of business.
yeah, I mean, they could pretty easily be 5-1 with their only loss coming to like the Ravens or the Chiefs. The only bad loss they have on their schedule uh, is the Patriots, which they lost to by 6 in week 1. But 1 point loss to the Chiefs, 5 point loss to the Commanders, and a 3 point loss to the Ravens. I mean, they should take care of business here, and then they play the Eagles and Raiders the following weeks. I see a world where they pretty easily take care of business those next 3 games as well.
And we'll get into this later. I really don't like the Eagles. And not just like as a
Yeah.
biased Commanders fan. They're not a good team. But, we'll get to that later. Again, before we move on to the next game, make sure you call in. Once again, we have the link in the YouTube chat. Hopefully, you are able to call in. Now, I said we'll get to the Eagles later. We actually have their game right now. They are playing against the Giants in New York. Eagles are just 3-point favorites. Probably would be a lot higher favorites if it weren't for their last few games. Eagles are 3-2. Giants are 2-4. Dallas Goedert is out with an injury in this one. And then, obviously, this is Saquon Barkley's return game. Do you have the Eagles picking up the win in this one?
Yeah. The Giants are not great. I mean, naturally, they're going to pick up a couple division wins, but I think that neither of these teams are all that strong this year. But I still think that I would take the Eagles in this one, just because I don't know. Nothing is all that inspiring to me about the way that the New York Giants have played so far this season. The Bengals game, they just were not able to create offensively, like at all. Malik Neighbors has been fine, and he is active this week as far as I know. But
Yes.
I just don't see this game going well for the Giants. I mean, Jalen Hurts is still pretty good. Saquon Barkley could probably rush for 5 or 6 touchdowns against this
Yeah.
defense if he had enough time on the field. So, yeah, I'm going to take the
I
Eagles.
definitely don't think a 3 touchdown game is actually out of the picture whatsoever for
Mm-hmm.
Saquon this game. Now, I mentioned, of course, Eagles haven't been good this year. In their last 3 games, they lost to the Bucks by 17, and then they beat the Saints and the Browns by a combined 7 points. Of course, 2 heavily struggling teams, and we saw not Kevin Stefanski, I'm blanking on the name. Nick Sirianni was talking crap to the Browns fans after, and it kind of looked dumb. You beat them by 4.
Mm-hmm.
You should beat them by multiple touchdowns. Despite that, I still comfortably do have Philadelphia in this one. They're just better on both sides of the ball. And Giants superstar offensive lineman Andrew Thomas is out for the season with an injury, which I mean, you look at New York right now; they definitely can't afford to lose extra protection for Daniel Jones. And this is kind of funny, but Malik Neighbors, I don't know if you saw, he attended a Travis Scott concert while under
Hmm.
concussion protocol. So, clearly he's fine for today's game, but I don't think that's going to be enough to pick up the win.
Yeah. I mean, I think Neighbors could probably get a touchdown or two, but at the end of the day, I don't think it'll matter too much because I don't think their defense can keep up with the Eagles' offensive players on their worst day.
Now, the Eagles' defense has been solid, like statistically, in terms of how many points they've allowed. It's been all right, but I still don't trust them to be able to contain a guy like Neighbors. I think they're a very
Hmm.
fraudulent defense. I think he could still have a big game. But moving forward, to one of the more boring games of the week, probably the most boring game of the week actually, is the Raiders versus the Rams. Maybe that's just me, but this game just really isn't that interesting. Rams favored by 7. Raiders are 2-4. Rams are 1-4. Jacoby Myers is doubtful. And of course, this is the Raiders' first game with Devontae Adams. So having Jacoby Myers doubtful definitely doesn't help because that means that the receiver game is kind of non-existent in this one. Other than Brock Bowers, I guess definitely stock up on Brock Bowers in fantasy if you play like a FanDuel or anything. But you know, after trading away Adams, I think it's safe to say that the Raiders probably just want the season to be over already. And on the other hand, I think the Rams have potential to be a good team. However, injuries have just really affected them this season. I'm still going to go with the Rams though.
Yeah, so Alex Bachman, who, according to his own social media, is the longest tenured practice squad player of all time at 6 years, um, was called up yesterday, which is not a good sign for the state of the Raiders wide receiver core. Nothing against Mr. Bachman. Uh, he's good enough to be in the NFL, so I have nothing against him. But the fact that they're going from Devontae Adams to a not super strong receiving core at all. It's just not a good sign for them. I don't think this game will be all that interesting. My friends tend to call, sorry about that, live near a hospital. Um, they call it the dreaded AFC West 4 o'clock game because you finish the 1 p.m. slate and then it's just like the Chargers or the Raiders playing some team, and the games have not been interesting this year. But I don't know. The Raiders are not going to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Now, one thing to consider is that the Rams are favorites by 7. I'm too young to bet, but if I could, I would not have them covering the spread because I just don't think that's reasonable to say that they're going to win by 8 points or more. They're just not a good enough team to do that. And, we've seen them hang with some good teams this year. The Lions in week 1, the Packers in, last week, and then they beat the
Mm-hmm.
49ers earlier. So give me Los Angeles. However, I do expect it to be close. Los Angeles gives up the most rushing yards per game out of any team. So I would say Zamir White could have a good game, but he hasn't done anything all year. So Alexander Madison, I guess, could have a good game. But yeah,
I'd say the best wide receiver on that Raiders team right now is probably DJ Turner, and I am biased because he's from the state of Maryland, went to UMD, and went to Pitt. But he mossed Joey Porter Jr. last week, and he's like 5'8". He's not 5'8". He's like 5'11". But Joey Porter Jr. is definitely taller. I think that if the Raiders want to win, Madison and Turner both have to have great games. But yeah, I don't know. That game is probably not going to be super fun.
yeah, and then another one is Trey Tucker, obviously
Yeah.
another option there. But overall, probably not tuning into that game. I don't know about you. Just 4 o'clock needs some better help. Usually, they don't have the most
Yeah.
interesting games. But one that I am excited to watch, and I think you probably are too, is the Panthers versus the Commanders in Washington. The Commanders are 8-point favorites. They're 4-2. The Panthers are 1-5. Jonathan Brooks will be out again this game. I'll let you start. I obviously have a lot of thoughts on this game, but I'll have you take it away first.
Um, Not too worried about what Jaden Daniels can do in this game. He's done better against better opponents. honestly don't really feel like there's much to talk about with the offense just because I think they'll have a pretty good game. Terry McLaurin should get open pretty regularly. Former pick guy Dane Jackson on the secondary in Carolina, but other than that, not much to talk about there. I think that after last week's game, which was about as good as you can feel in a loss, I know there's like no moral victories in the NFL, but they played really well. They can compete with the best of the best, which it looks like the Ravens definitely are. Um, I think that it'll be more of an important game for the defense, building confidence, especially against. I know it's not Bryce Young anymore, but Dalton's not the best at not turning the ball over. So if they could get a couple turnovers, force fumbles, I know Luvu's back for this game. But if someone like Ben St. Just or like someone who's struggled so far this year can get a turnover or a big pass breakup or something like that, I think that is important. I think that the Commanders win this game, but I also have seen them have two winning seasons in my lifetime, so I'm always going to expect the worst.
Yeah, now you mentioned Luvu. I guess it's a little bit of a revenge game for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have some thoughts on this game. As I said, the offense does not have to worry about anything. We saw Jaden Daniels last week against the Ravens. I actually have the stats with me right now. 269 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 turnovers. He still leads the league with a 75.3 completion percentage. There's nothing to worry about with Daniels. This should be a breeze for him. McLaurin has also been really good. Of course, he started rough against the Buccaneers, struggled week 2 against the Giants. Since then, in his past 4 games, he's averaged 5 receptions per game for 79 yards and a touchdown. He's just been a beast. Of course, 2 touchdowns against the Ravens last week, where the Commanders they were hanging in with the Ravens. Of course, much tougher competition. Only lost by 7 points. Competitive throughout the entire game. Now, as you said, this is really a test for the defense for the Commanders. The defensive line has struggled a little bit this season. They've gotten a lot better recently. They played well against the Browns. They played well against the Cardinals. And then the same with the secondary. We saw a Mike Sanistril interception last game, I think. So there's a lot to prove still in the secondary. St. Jude's has been a little rough recently, but a good test for the defense with some easier competition, and then the offense should be good as usual. And I could see this being up to a 20-point win for the Commanders. I
Yeah.
mean,
I think that I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, especially because of how weak the room is relatively, that Mike Sainer still becomes the best defensive back, cornerback, safety, whatever, on the team within a couple weeks. Definitely by the time the Steelers game rolls around week 10, uh, that'll be a big test because I have no idea if the Steelers are actually good. And I say that as someone who writes for
yeah,
like writes about the team, but I think this is just like a big game for individual performances. I'm less worried about like the overall team performance.
yeah, should be just getting everyone playing their best. Overall, should be a pretty easy win. But yeah,
I mean,
we'll
like
get
don't let off the gas. That's important. Like
yeah.
don't this team has not played so far like it's like a competitive football team, the Panthers. Don't make them seem like one. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the Commanders, of course, I said they could win by 20. They beat the Browns in week 5 by 21. They beat the Cardinals by 28, I think, the week before that. So obviously they can play really well against these struggling teams. So we'll see if that happens again today. Now, moving over
I
to
do think that Dalton is a better quarterback than Watson, but
moving over to the another pretty big game this week. I had a poll on my put up a poll on my YouTube channel yesterday asking my audience what they thought the game of the week was, and to no one's surprise, the Chiefs 49ers game ended up getting the most votes. I think there was like 100 total votes that game, got 30% of them around that. Um, but a Super Bowl rematch. As I mentioned, Chiefs are still undefeated. This game takes place in San Francisco. 49ers 2-point favorites. Chiefs 5-0. 49ers 3-3. Jawan Jennings is out. Who do you have?
Okay, I'm going to say two things that back to back don't make sense. I have the Chiefs. I think neither team is in the Super Bowl this year. The Chiefs have not played. I mean, of course, they're undefeated. But they've not played inspiring football all season. They almost lost to the Bengals when the Bengals were not playing that well. They beat the Ravens by 1 touchdown, but I felt like that was more on Coach Harbaugh than the Chiefs winning that game. Beat the Chargers by a touchdown, beat the Falcons by 5, and then they beat a Saints team that is clearly not very good. But yet the Niners haven't done anything all that impressive this year either. I would say that this game could actually be like surprisingly boring. Because I don't
I
see
could see
either
that.
team doing that
Now,
well. The Rice injury is bigger, will have a bigger impact later on in the season. But yeah.
Now, everything I'm going to say here is going to contradict myself, but people have the 49ers as favorites, or at least ESPN does, because that's what I
Mm-hmm.
use for this. Um, and I think that the 49ers overall have a better roster. Of course, they're dealing with less injuries than where they were earlier in the season. McCaffrey's still not back, but Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk are all healthy, which is something we haven't consistently seen this season. It should be a very good game for them. And then the Chiefs, they've struggled this year. Mahomes had an off year, and I know his standards are extremely high. An off year could be considered a lot of things for Mahomes, but it really hasn't been a great year for him. Pacheco got injured. We saw an injury for Rashee Rice, as you mentioned. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, so everything is leaning towards me going with the 49ers here, but I'm still going to go with the Chiefs. I'm still going to go with the Chiefs. I think they have it. I am interested to see Ricky Pearsall is coming back this game, so that will be exciting to watch him. But I'm still going to go with the Chiefs, even though I really feel like I shouldn't be. You can't count out Mahomes. And I don't think, here's the thing, if they lose this game, people are going to say, oh, they might have won the Super Bowl last year, but the 49ers are now better this year. Mahomes isn't going to let that happen. Mahomes has to make sure that everyone knows that the Chiefs are still a better team, and I think that the Chiefs are picking up this win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving over to the next game, and you're obviously going to have a lot to talk about with this game. Jets versus Steelers in Pittsburgh. Jets are 2-point favorites. Jets are 2-4. Steelers flipped at their 4-2. No major injuries, I don't think, heading into this one. Now, of course, you're the Steelers expert here. I'll let you take it away. What's your prediction heading into this matchup? Obviously, Devontae
Okay.
Adams is now a New York Jet.
So remove Devontae Adams from the picture and have Russell Wilson starting. I think the Steelers still lose this game. They're, in my eyes at least, of course, Wilson hasn't played yet this year. They're replacing a quarterback who is mobile and a semi-inaccurate passer with a quarterback who is also not the most accurate, but is not mobile. I think that the Steelers have yet to have a convincing win this season. They've beat a not great Browns team 20-10. They beat a Broncos team 13-6. They did the same thing the Commanders did against the Giants, but against the Falcons to open the season, having 6 field goals to win 18-10. But the Falcons have really picked it up since then. Lost embarrassingly to the Colts and Cowboys, and then beat the Raiders convincingly. But that game was just whatever. It was the best performance of Fields' season so far, and they benched him. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. But I would take the Jets before Devontae Adams, and now you add Adams, and just like the vibe of that Jets team has completely turned around, and I think that vibes, honestly, are play a bigger picture in the outcome of games than people think, because like momentum really does matter. But the Steelers are also missing Zach Frazier, their center, this game, and Cordell Patterson is out, and that means that they basically have a backup center and no running back or wide receiver depth. So I would take the Jets.
Yeah, now before I get to my prediction for this game, let me welcome Connor Long to the show of Jets X Factor. You can check out Connor's work at New York Flight Jets Talk on YouTube. Connor, how you feeling heading into this game?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing well. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. I will say this in regard to the Jets Steelers game. I'm a big Jet fan, but I will say this, are the fact that, I think the loss of Zach Frazier is, overplayed more than it should be. If you look at the Jets' run stuffing numbers this year, they're not great. The Jets have not been able to stop the run. Quinnen Williams, he's basically been invisible. He hasn't done anything. So I think, you mentioned Cordero Patterson there. I don't really think he returns kicks, obviously, but the run game's more, focused centered around the duo of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. I don't think this Jets team is going to be able to stop the run. I have the Jets winning, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop the run tonight because it's not like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are the two biggest names on paper. The way Mike Tomlin is able to utilize the two, the way he's able to kind of mismatch receiving and Jets linebackers, especially Quincy Williams, he's been terrible in pass coverage all year. I expect the Steelers to, perform a lot better than expected. I will say that.
But have you looked at the wide receivers that the Steelers are putting out for this game? Because it goes George Pickens, and then it's Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, maybe Roman Wilson because he's
It doesn't matter
questionable.
though. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that the Jets secondary, regardless of health, regardless of who they actually put out, should have a decent chance of stopping what the Steelers put out, especially with the stagnant offense that Arthur Smith has brought to the table so far this season. I just don't see it being a good game for the Steelers offensively. Their run should be pretty good, but if they try passing, I don't think it'll work very well. Also, I saw that there was news about Reddick. Is he playing today?
No, he's reporting tomorrow.
Okay, got it.
I was curious about that too.
Yeah,
that would have been like a big swing in the Jets' direction. I still think they win.
Yeah, he's either playing next week against the Patriots or the week after on Halloween. Yeah, he hasn't even officially reported yet. They just worked something out.
I will say the Jets can lose if DJ Reed can't figure out the penalties, because that was really bad.
It's not only Reed though. There's his
were just like the most obvious. I think that they came in more high leverage situations, so they were more noticeable. But yeah, I think that the Jets will win this one. I think that it'll be an interesting game just because the teams, I think, are relatively equal at this point in the season, but I think that can change as the season goes on.
Now, Connor, of course, you have your own Jets podcast, all that stuff. Is this a must-win game for the Jets? Because they're 2-4. They're playing in a division with the Bills, who are doing at least all right now and look to be, the leaders of the division. And I think you go into you play, I believe, New England next week. So if you pick up this win today and then you pick up the win next week, you're 4-4 again. Is this a must-win game for the Jets?
Matthew, this is as close to a must-win game as possible. This is huge for the Jets because 2-4 feels like now we're out of the race for top seed in the AFC East, but anything could happen. At 2-5, then you're really putting yourself in a bad spot for the playoffs. I think only 6% of teams since 1999 have made the playoffs that have started 2-5. So this is huge for the Jets. Just there's no reason right now, guys. The Jets shouldn't be a 5-1 team. We can look at every one of their losses. Week 1, that's a loss. You chalk that up. That's their one loss. Week 4, though, Greg Zuerlein hits that field goal. Jets don't allow that many penalties. Week 5, they travel to London. I mean, that was a disaster. Mike Williams' offensive miscommunication at the end of the game. Again, just poor penalty play. Jets could have easily won that game. Week 6 against the Bills. Greg Zuerlein, 2 missed kicks. Seen that video. Two of all 3 of his missed kicks have come in such crucial moments. 2 pivotal ones last week, and then one, crucial one during week 4 that has ended up losing the game for the Jets. So there's no reason they should be a 5-1 team right now. The record, obviously, you're only as good as your record shows. However, this is a must win. I think the Broncos game is always going to come back to haunt the Jet fans and the Jets in general as the season progresses. It's just if they're below 500 entering that Halloween game, I think you're in a really, really bad spot because Texans, they're 5-1. You could argue they're not like a pretty 5-1 team, but I still think they're a 13, 14, heck, even maybe a 15-win team in this league. They have so much talent. So you gotta, ideally you want to go 3-0 over these next slate of games, but you have to go 2-1. There's no excuse. 2-1 minimal.
Yeah, now, of course, I don't want to ask too much about this because I'm sure you've already talked a lot about Davante Adams, of course, since coming to the Jets. But what do you think his role is in this game?
Well, Matthew, I think he's going to have a really increased role because it's not like he's learning a new offensive system. Yes, Todd Downing's the new offensive play caller, but Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator, he's still heavily, involved in game planning. Hackett and Adams spent a few seasons together in Green Bay. Rodgers and Adams spent 8 seasons together in Green Bay, put up video game like numbers. I will say this. I think this addition is so huge because one of the main reasons the Jets have not been able to, like I said, be that 5-1 team is because Rodgers' poor chemistry with his receivers. Now you look, they went from at the start of the season, which I viewed as one of the most weak wide receiver rooms in the NFL, to now one of the strongest. Now you're putting a second and third string DBs on someone like Garrett Wilson because you have to prioritize Davante Adams. Now this is just a nightmare for opposing defenses. You have, you could now. My favorite thing is now you can like mix and match with Garrett. Because Garrett, even all of last year, his whole rookie season, and then even the first 6 weeks of this year, he had to be that every down guy, that every type player. Yes, Alan Lazard has stepped up, but now you can kind of mess around. I want to see Garrett more in this slot. You put guys like Adams and Lazard on the outside, and then Mike Williams again is kind of that fourth guy, that sixth man, if we're using basketball terms here. Who's going to be that guy, rotational type piece, come off the bench. Then you look past him, you have someone like Xavier Gibson, who I still think has potential in the slot. I think it's a talented room, but to answer your question, Matt, I expect a big game out of him, and I expect targets to be just shared around more. We saw Garrett Wilson get targeted 22 times during Week 5. Davante Adams was targeted around the same time, around that same amount in around 2019 or 2020. So, I don't expect one player to eat up the vast majority of the targets, but I do. Yeah, I'll say this, Matt. I do expect a touchdown out of Davante Adams. I think he's going to really fix the Jets' red zone woes. They've really struggled to finish in the red zone with touchdowns, and Adams currently, I think, is the sixth most touchdowns as an active player in the league right now. So I expect Adams to be that huge player in the red zone for the Jets.
I do think that this is probably they probably have the easiest division in terms of shot at making the playoffs by winning the division. They have the Bills, but other than that, I mean, the Dolphins and Patriots.
You have to see.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
but
the Dolphins are already taking themselves into a big enough hole. If they lose a few more times, and when Tua comes back, they're really going to be, already.
Yeah, I mean, at this point,
argument about the Jets.
At this point, the Dolphins and Jets both have 2 wins. The Patriots, I just lost. So, I think that if the Bills start faltering, the Jets really have an opportunity. I think they've played uncharacteristically bad based on how talented they are. I don't think they're a 15-win team, but like 11, 12 wins pretty easily could be done with this roster.
Jets.
But yeah.
Wow. So if they were to win 12 games, they could only lose one more game for the rest of the season.
Well, yeah, I meant that more in terms of like going into the season, they could have won, I don't know, 11, 12, something. But at this point, probably, I think I see them as a at least a 9-10 win team for the rest of the season just because they have Adams now. And if that clicks, then that'll work really well. But they also don't play the hardest schedule going forward.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you want to check out Connor's work, he is a writer for Jets X Factor. Make sure you check that out. And he also has his YouTube channel at New York Flight Jets Talk on YouTube. Again, daily podcast. Has some great guests on there. Make sure you check out his work. Really appreciate the call in. But moving on, we have our Monday night games. Now, there's two Monday night games. Of course, we're going to have to wrap this up soon because we're getting near that hour threshold. But Ravens versus Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. Ravens are 3.5-point favorites. This is a battle of the 4-2 teams. I'll let you start here. What do you have in this one?
I think both of these teams are great. I think the Ravens win, but Baker Mayfield's going to play incredible. Which is crazy saying that because, like, if you said that 2-3 years ago, no, everyone would look at you crazy. But I honestly think he might be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL at this point. But I don't know. The Ravens have been on fire. If the Buccaneers can't defend Zay Flowers any better than the Commanders did, which was not good, then that game's going to be pretty much over as soon as it starts because the Ravens offense is just unreal with Derrick Henry. But I mean, the Buccaneers are still very good. Their defense could use a little bit of work, but their offense has been really, really solid. I really like what they've been doing with the run game, but I would still take the Ravens.
Yeah, no, I'm actually going to say that this is my upset of the week. You make a great point with Derrick Henry. I know he's not going to win MVP, but right now he should be the MVP front runner. They're still not going to give it to a running back, though. I mean, the Ravens this season, the main reason I have the Buccaneers in this one is because of how bad the Ravens' passing defense has been. They've allowed 276 passing yards per game, which is 31st in the NFL. And then you look at the Buccaneers. Obviously, Chris Godwin has been amazing this year. Mike Evans is playing this game. He has been amazing. In the Bucs' last 3 games, they've scored 51, 30, and 33. There is no reason that they shouldn't put up at least 30 points against this very subpar Ravens passing defense. I have a Buccaneers close win, and I have Baker Mayfield going for 4 touchdowns in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now,
I mean, I think that's fair. I think it could go either way, and I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be an exciting one. Now, moving over to our final game of the week, Chargers versus Cardinals in Arizona. Chargers 2.5-point favorites. Chargers are 3-2 on the year. Cardinals are 2-4. Now, I want to start here, and NFL puts out these previews for every single game, just like 7 minutes, some stats to be aware of, all that. I was watching the preview for this game, and there's a stat that really caught my eye. It was the Chargers are 3-0 when J.K. Dobbins has rushed for over 95 yards, 0-2 when he hasn't rushed for over 95 yards, and the Cardinals have allowed the 4th most rushing yards out of per game out of any team this year. Their run defense has not been good. I think that the Chargers are going to exploit that. I think they're going to rely heavily on running the ball, use J.K. Dobbins a lot, and I could see this being a good win for the Chargers if they really get Dobbins involved in the run game. But I'm interested to see what you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chargers win because Arizona's defense is just not great. Their offense is fine. James Conner's really good. But other than that, not that much interesting going on there. So I would give it to the Chargers. I think that this will be one of the more boring games this week.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this one's going to be too exciting.
Yeah, I don't like the double Monday nights because it splits the viewership. Like I get that it somehow makes more money, but it splits viewership, and I feel like most people are gonna tune into the Ravens game, um, because it's like two teams that have an upwards trajectory, two teams that have a downwards one. But I think that the Chargers will probably win this one. I think that this is a big year for some no longer younger quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert to really like keep on proving why they deserve to have a starting job in the league. Because they've been good so far in their careers, but really haven't been elite. Um, and Herbert can start that with tonight's game, taking advantage of their defense. But
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with that being said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I
yeah,
know
thank
that,
you for having me.
yeah, I know that it was kind of last second, so really appreciate you being able to come on. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up?
Nope. Yeah, just thank you.
Absolutely. Should be a super exciting week of football. And for everyone who made it up to this point, I can't thank you enough for watching. Make sure you also tune into our week 7 recap show taking place at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, where I will be joined by Josh Wolver of Josh's Sports Report to break down everything that happened during week 7 of the NFL season. Looking forward to seeing you guys there. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman alongside Ari Meyer for your week 7 Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate show. And as always, we'll see you next time.